Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking a little bit, we're just going to have a little bit of a solo podcast is what I'm going to do. Talking all about the latest Nottingham Forest news, the last game, a little honest assessment of that game, what we can learn from it, and also how that can maybe, in a way, trigger us to look at January recruitment a little bit better. But just before I start this video, I just want to say thank you for all your support with the Kieran Maguire FFP chat video. It's been the best video I've ever released in terms of engagement, which is not what it's about, but it's always great when that happens. So just want to say a big thank you to you for helping us out with that and sharing it, giving me your honest feedback, whether that be good or bad, and you know, sticking around and listening to it. I've really appreciated it. We've got another episode with Kieran coming up very soon, talking about the accounts when it all comes out on the 14th of January. So stick with us. We're going to do it. It might be a couple of days after, but you will get a reaction from Kieran, who, of course, is one of the best guys to talk about football finance with. So a major coup for the podcast for sure. But that being said, expect that level with this podcast. We are going to be doing lots of great stuff. And yeah, that is the level that we expect this podcast to be at in terms of guests and beyond as well. So a big thank you to Kieran for joining me for that. And if you're listening, Kieran, looking forward to seeing you and speaking to you soon. So I hope you've all had a good Christmas, a good New Year. A couple of other things as well before we properly start. And I feel like I've got a million announcements to make, but I'm moving house in probably the next month or two. Which means that this whole background here will be gone. I've been wanting to make a more professional background forever. I've not been blessed with the greatest of room space for that. But that being said, it will all be changing very soon. It'll be a more professional setup. It'll be a different streaming software as well, which I'm looking into this week. So I'm doing a lot of prep. I'm doing a lot of research while also preparing to move house. And I'll have my own studio at my house that is separate from my room. So that will just be dedicated to doing things like this, doing all my work. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. It's something that I've always wanted, and it will make the products or the work that I do more professional looking, and it will of course make the content better for you guys. It'll be a higher quality content, and I'm really looking forward to it. So stick with me. This backdrop won't be forever. I will have my Forest shirts pinned up. I'll have all sorts of really nice graphics and stuff ready. So looking forward to that. But that's in a couple of months' time, so stick with me. But today's episode, let's talk about it. It's going to be quite brief, but I want to talk about the Blackpool game to start with. Now, it was a game that was certainly uninspiring. I thought the atmosphere at the City Ground, I'll be completely brutally honest with you, and I don't like to really critique it because I know that a lot of families went, and I know it wasn't really the same atmosphere because, you know, it's people that are new going perhaps and people that haven't got the chance to. And I love that about the Cup, by the way, you know, seeing all the tweets and Instagram and Facebook posts about kids that have had their first game at the City Ground. It's not the greatest of games to watch, but, you know, they've got to watch some of their superheroes that they've only had the chance to watch on TV. So in that respect, beautiful. Love that. And I think the way that the club's done it, and especially with giving a ticket to an older guy that hasn't been for a while, if you've seen it on Twitter, it's worth looking at Mil Taddis's account. He's done a few bits for that. But just the way that it was brilliant in terms of that. The atmosphere was a little bit poor, and the players didn't really give much for the fans to cheer about in respect to that. Until maybe the last part of the second half. And even then it kind of drooped off a bit. And to be honest, the game started really slow. Forest looked cautious. And while I don't think that they underestimated Blackpool, because you shouldn't underestimate any team, League One, League Two, in the FA Cup, anything can happen. Maidstone United are proving it. And what a great job their coaches are doing there. It's absolutely fantastic. Lovely to see. And for this Forest side, you shouldn't underestimate Blackpool, but the amount of respect that they gave them was embarrassing, really, to be honest. We gave them way too much respect. Blackpool sat deep. We get that. They kind of did what Forest sort of do or did last season. And for me, I think that Forest struggled to be the dominant side in a game. Whereas, of course, they can be the better side. But when it comes to dominating, I don't know if that's something that Forest can do. I mean, they beat United and they dominated. But in a respect, they were still the underdog. And that's what kind of spurred them on a little bit. Whereas they're the big team. They're expected to win. The pressure got to them a little bit. And we've seen that so many times with Forest this season. So mentality-wise, it was off. You know, it was completely off tactically. I really liked it. You know, obviously you were transitioning, you were kind of having three at the back in a way with your CDM dropping in to that back three. Maybe Danilo, it tended to be with the eights a bit higher up. And then, you know, moving out from the back. But I thought, if I'm being honest about everyone, I thought that Worrell was a little bit too slow to distribute. Murillo was a little bit slippy on the ball. For me, Murillo needs a senior centre-back next to him. And I think that yesterday was probably one of his worst games as a Forest player. But it's also important to remember he's 21. He's used to having an experienced player next to him. Not to say that that player has to do more for him, but perhaps the communication is better. Montiel really lacked yesterday for me. The marking for the first goal was the second goal was inexcusable. I mean, the marking for the first goal to allow him to have a header from the penalty area was inexcusable. But the second one, you know, Worrell's got to be able to close down the cross before it's even come in. Vlachodimos has got to commit on the penalty area to not let it go past that area. I mean, it's inexcusable for a ball to roll across no man's land and for no one to take it. And then it's bad that Montiel didn't track the runner behind him. So bad communication, schoolboy errors that led to the second goal in particular. And overall, Forest let themselves down in that respect. And for me, I'm not sure whether Vlachodimos is the man to be considered a number one, with all due respect to him. There's been criticism of Turner, but maybe it is harsh, perhaps. But for me, to allow a ball to roll across your penalty area and not to come out and commit to that is inexcusable for me. But maybe that isn't a communication error, and that's where you need your senior centre back that is Premier League quality to lead that line. And I love Joe Worrell's commitment to Forest. I love what he's done in the past, but for me, he's not up to this level. And if you are going to play him, he's the same as Murillo. He needs a senior centre-back next to him. When Worrell played next to Felipe, while not exactly perfect, that's where you got the best out of Worrell, in those games where he was next to Felipe, someone that's got so much experience, or Bolly. So for me, Murillo needs to be next to someone like Niakate or Bolly, or Felipe even. But that's the reality of that defensive area. Toffolo, did okay. But again, they all kind of looked off at the back four, really. But Montiel, other than the assist, which was a good one, eventually it was a good one. I thought he was a bit inconsistent that game, and he didn't show the glimpses that he did at United. But the moves weren't quite the same as they usually are when it comes to having Niakate alongside him. You could tell there was a communication issue between him and Worrell, because they were kind of arguing in a way at one point in the first half when I was watching it. And you could tell that there was just a bit of a breakdown in talk there. And that needs to improve. In the midfield, I thought Forest were okay. I thought Danilo was okay. Yates was okay. I mean, there was a few misplaced passes, a few too many misplaced passes, to be honest. But again, game was moving too slow. Nobody knew where the next destination for the pass was. And the way that Nuno likes to play is quite quick. So that let us down a little bit. Gibbs White was okay. I thought he had a good game, but even for him, you could tell he was kind of playing a little bit more cautiously, and obviously really crucial equaliser for him. So I'd say Gibbs White was probably one of the better players, but I couldn't find a man of the match for me. I think that there was no one deserving of a man of the match. No one shone for me. There was just glimpses of good performance throughout for a couple of players. Dominguez was starting pretty poorly, but redeemed himself with a goal and some great work with Morgan with the one-touch passing and the build-ups that were good down the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So impressed by him as well. Eventually he did quite well. Hudson-Odoi was okay down the left-hand side. I feel that having Tavares helped him out a lot. Tavares demanded that intensity, demanded the speed going forward, but I don't think that others matched his speed going forward. Eventually, later on, they did. Hudson-Odoi's chip and Tavares' cross, just Chris Wood couldn't quite get onto it, was a good example. So, yeah, I thought Tavares was a very positive performance, and I would like to see him play and start against Blackpool, actually, in the next, in the replay. So, positive from Tavares. Defending was okay as well. So, Hudson-Odoi, not too bad. You can tell that maybe he was a little bit unfit. But overall, getting some minutes in his legs is what he really needs. He needs to get used to playing regular Premier League football if we're going to continue in a 4-2-3-1. And Chris Wood, little bit disappointed, to be honest. I know he got into good places again, but he just couldn't finish. I think he got unlucky on a couple of occasions, but other times demanded a little bit more composure. But that's me being brutally honest with the whole squad. Again, mentality wasn't right, work where it wasn't right for the most part, and little errors cost Forest. And I thought the floodgates were going to open like they did a year ago yesterday against Blackpool away at Bloomfield. So, an improved performance would have been nice, and I think in some ways it was an improved performance from the loss at Blackpool. Of course, you can't really get much worse than that loss at Blackpool away. But that being said, it feels like a loss in some respects because of how poor the performance was. So that leads me on to my next point. January. It's evident that AFCON is having an effect, I feel, because you would have had African players playing in that fixture for sure. I can imagine Sangare would have been getting some game time, playing in that 6 and cementing himself into that role. Niakate probably would have been continuing good form. Bolly probably would have been, maybe getting some minutes as well. So Aina as well as your fullback, it would have been nice to see because he gets up the pitch really quick. But that being said, AFCON, it's a huge loss. Forest have got an aging defence with the likes of Felipe and Bolly. So, of course, you're going to have to bring in some cover for Niakate and Murillo. Murillo's very reliable with injuries, and Niakate has been this season also. So, not too worried about those two, but their cover at the moment is Worrell, McKenna, Omar Bamidele, who's probably not going to play because, and it's worth mentioning that if Omar Bamidele plays at any point throughout January, he can't leave on loan because he's played for 2 clubs already at that point. You can't play for 3 in a season. So that's why Forest are holding off with playing him. But if it comes to a point where they sell Worrell or McKenna, it might be the case where they keep Omar Bamidele. So defensive backup and cover is a concern for me. Omar Bamidele doesn't have Premier League experience. McKenna supposedly doesn't want to play, and his relation with the club is completely broken down. Joe Worrell isn't necessarily showing glimpses of a player that's ready to cover, but that's for Nuno to decide, not for me as a fan. And of course, you've got your players out for AFCON. So not getting Nino in from Fluminense is a bit of a shame. I know what people are saying about FFP, and I can't see Forest not spending because of FFP. Whether they'll spend a lot, I don't think so. I didn't really think the plan was to anyway. The belief is that they'll bring in maybe 2 or 3 players. Likely a winger is probably the priority. A winger is the priority, maybe a striker, and then possibly a centre-back as well. But obviously, goalkeeper they're looking at. Jose Sar's a big target, and I would like Jose Sar there. It's just what happens with Lacademos and Turner, isn't it? So, there's and Hennessy as well, and Horvath as well, who's still on the books. So we've got a lot of goalkeepers, but whether we've got good enough goalkeepers, I don't really know. But January's a big one for Forest. I really want to see us sign a semi-decent centre-back that's good cover, because I do worry that if, Niakate or Murillo gets injured, you've got your other players there in Bolly, but Bolly's out of contract in the summer. Felipe's out of contract in the summer, and McKenna's out of contract in the summer. So you do need to reinforce. And again, if you do give Bolly, or I can't see Felipe getting a contract extension, Bolly potentially, if Forest stay up, then, you've still got an aging defence because you will have to make a lot of changes. So Omar Bamidele, an investment for the future, but you do need some now investments that are ready to cover as well. So that's a position I'd like to focus on. I'd like to focus on a Hudson-Odoi cover as well. We know that he can be a bit unreliable with injuries, and that's the due diligence Forest will have done before he joined. I mean, everyone knew, really. And Elanga's out for a period, a couple of weeks to 2 or 3 weeks. So you'll need someone that can really play left or right. And I don't think you'll need 2 wingers. I think one will do you. A striker, I would still like to see us sign a striker. I know what people have said about Chris Wood, but for me, Divock Origi, I'd terminate his loan if you can do that. A lot of money per week. I don't know what AC Milan are paying, but either way, it's wages that I feel are being wasted at the moment. Origi's injured again, and it's just injury after injury. And when he plays, there's not really a lot of promise shown. So a lot of respect for what he did at Liverpool. I understand that, but I want to see him do something at Forest. I'm a Forest fan, and there hasn't really been any performance that I can note and say we played well there and deserves to be given a chance. I think he's been given his chances but he's injury prone and you're paying him a lot of money. So for me, Origi would be sent back to AC Milan and we'd get another striker in if we can. Maybe it's on a loan basis. I know that the ownership might not want to take risks if the worst is that Forest are charged with some sort of FFP breach. But again, that's speculation and we'll avoid that. So, yeah, striker, centre-back and a winger would be my three. Would I go crazy with it? Probably not. Centre-back is probably the area I'd put the most. Well, no, say actually striker is probably the place I put the most focus into, but a winger and a centre-back would be important for me. So they're my three places. That's my little review of the Blackpool game as well. And lastly, I just want to say Nuno is a great manager. And tactically, I think Forest look a lot better. Pardon me. I think they know what football they want to play. I think that Forest have an identity or are starting to create an identity, which is something I feel that, as harsh as it is to say and as horrible as it feels to say, because I still love Steve Cooper, but we didn't really have for Steve Cooper with the majority of the time, especially in the last period of his tenure. So I would say that despite the Blackpool draw, which I'm frustrated about, there's a lot of positive signs for Forest going forward. You've got 4 games this month, limited game time. We're lucky. I don't necessarily agree with Nuno's comments about the replay. We're only playing 4 games. Neil Critchley actually was spot on for me. They've played something like 26 games already, or, they've played a lot of games, not including cup competitions as well. So they've played a lot in the Championship and they've had their share of injuries and they just get on with it. And I think we have to do that as well. And whether the chat about replay is just overall, regardless of the draw, fair enough. But Forest has just got to get on with it, try and get a result at Bloomfield and move forward, get a result, build that momentum up. Forest aren't going to be going to St George's Park for the bonding trip that they planned because of the draw against Blackpool. So back to the drawing board and getting prepared for the next game. But it's a big game in that replay. You don't want to get humiliated, but Blackpool came with a game plan, stuck to it, and for the most part, it worked. And Jordan Rhodes still looks like a decent player, as much as that, again, pains me to say. So, disappointing draw. I like Nuno a lot. Early signs are very good. Well, good wins, obviously, previously against Newcastle and Man U, and an unlucky loss against Bournemouth, which you robbed, really. So I'm happy with Nuno. He speaks well. He reads the game really well. I didn't disagree with much that he said in his press conference in terms of the game performance analysis. So when a manager's saying what you're saying at home, usually it's a good thing for the most part. So very happy with him. Very happy with the way the club's going. Disappointed with the Blackpool draw, but that being said, a big month ahead. January recruitment to be had, and I can imagine we'll hear more in the coming weeks. But stick around on this channel. More chat on FFP coming very soon with Kieran Maguire and myself. I'll be doing a solo episode just like this as well, reacting to it after the 14th with a further explanation from Kieran coming soon after that. So do stick around. We'll be bringing you more episodes weekly and looking forward to seeing you all very soon. But in the meantime, take care. Have a good rest. Enjoy whatever you're doing this week. And also, if you haven't already and you're new to the channel, subscribe, like, and let me know your feedback. I'm always looking for feedback. And don't forget, this backdrop, it's going soon. We're going to have a more professional backdrop coming very soon, so do stick with us. But for the meantime, it's me, Jamie. I've been talking Forest. Take care. Have a great week, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers.